Right now, the multi-billion-dollar global rollout of artificial intelligence is, well, it's being held hostage.
There really is.
Not by software and not by a lack of advanced silicon GPUs, but by a microscopic ceramic sandwich that's smaller than a grain of rice.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
So, we're looking at an incredibly severe global shortage that has basically slammed into the tech world here in mid-2026.
Right.
And the component in question used to cost fractions of a cent. I mean, you could buy it by the bucket load
Yeah.
on a week's notice.
hmm
But now it's a 16-month bottleneck that is threatening to stall the entire AI infrastructure build-out.
It's a completely remarkable shift in the physical realities of the tech industry. I mean, we are looking at the largest compute clusters ever designed by humanity,
It's
right?
the Odyssey scale.
And their deployment schedules are being entirely dictated by this tiny, completely unglamorous speck of technology called a multi-layer ceramic capacitor, or MLCC. An MLCC. So our mission today is to figure out exactly how we got here. And to do that, we've got a massive stack of sources on the table to help us connect the dots for you.
We've got a lot to cover.
We really do. We are pulling from industry reports from TrendForce, some really technical deep dives from Icy Components and ExplainX.ai. We've also got supply chain bulletins from Fusion Worldwide, news articles from the Alex, and various market commentaries from Substack.
It's a very comprehensive picture when you put it all together.
Definitely. But before we get into the shortage itself, we need to understand what this invisible workhorse actually does. Because if you were to crack open your smartphone or your laptop or your car right now, you would find thousands of these
It's
MLCCs.
thousands of them, yeah.
So what is their actual job when it comes to powering something as complex as an AI server?
Well, at the most fundamental level, an MLCC is a passive electronic component designed to manage power turbulence.
Okay, power turbulence.
Right. So imagine you are driving a massive, incredibly powerful sports car. If that engine revs wildly from 0 to 1,000 horsepower in a single microsecond,
The physical torque would literally tear the frame of the car apart.
exactly, it would shake itself to pieces if you didn't have a highly specialized suspension system.
Mm.
The AI GPU is that engine, and these MLCCs are the microscopic shock absorbers keeping the entire electrical framework stable.
A microscopic shock absorber for electricity. That is a great analogy. It makes a lot of visual sense. But what is causing that electrical torque in the first place? Like, why is the power delivery so turbulent?
It comes down to how these AI chips actually compute. Because in any electronic circuit, the power coming in from the wall isn't perfectly smooth.
Right, you have voltage ripples.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
But more importantly, when an NVIDIA or AMD accelerator is performing AI training, it moves rapidly between idle phases, memory-bound phases, and heavily compute-bound phases.
And it does this constantly.
Constantly. In those moments, thousands of transistors wake up and switch in near unison. The power draw swings by hundreds of watts in literally a fraction of a second.
Wow.
And if that sudden, violent demand for current pulls the overall voltage of the circuit down even slightly, just a tiny bit, the chip crashes.
So the MLCC's job is to sit directly next to the processor.
Right, exactly. It sits right there, smooths out those baseline ripples, and supplies instantaneous current the millisecond the chip's power draw spikes. And then it seamlessly releases it as the load settles.
I was looking at this TrendForce report, and I actually had to reread the numbers because they just didn't seem physically possible to me.
The scale is pretty staggering.
It is. So a conventional, traditional dual-socket server, the kind of machine that has comfortably powered the internet for the last decade that uses about 2,200 MLCCs.
Right.
But when you look at a single AI GPU board, that number jumps to anywhere from 15,000 to 60,000.
And it goes higher.
It does. I looked at the spec sheet for a next-generation AI GPU rack. If you look at the NVL72 class or the upcoming Rubin platform, you are looking at a staggering 440,000 to 600,000 MLCCs per rack.
Yeah.
How does a single server rack even physically fit 500,000 capacitors?
Well, they fit because they're incredibly small, I mean, often barely visible to the naked eye. But the sheer volume you were talking about, exactly why the industry was caught off guard here.
Nobody saw it coming.
No, let me give you a verified example from the technical sources.
Yeah.
Look at the AMD MI450 platform.
Okay.
On that single board, just one specific MLCC specification jumped from 1,440 units per board in the previous generation to 10,544 units per board.
That is a 632% increase.
Exactly. A 632% increase for just one single line item on the bill of materials. Engineers completely ripped out older, bulkier aluminum and tantalum capacitors and replaced them entirely with these advanced MLCCs during validation.
Just because the older tech couldn't handle the power transients fast enough.
Exactly. The old stuff was just too slow.
Which really shifts the narrative of the last few years, honestly. I mean, everyone watching the AI boom has been hyper-focused on memory. All we hear about is high bandwidth memory, or HBM, being this massive bottleneck holding up GPU production.
What's fascinating here is that while the entire industry had their eyes glued to the memory stack, the actual bottleneck quietly slipped one layer further down the bill of materials.
Down to the power delivery.
Right. It moved from the memory chips down to the power delivery network itself. Historically, nobody paid attention to capacitors because they were treated as cheap, abundant commodities. But the violent power swings of AI server architectures completely changed the math.
So, if we suddenly need hundreds of thousands of these microscopic shock absorbers per server rack, the logical question you're probably asking yourself right now is, why don't the manufacturers just fire up more machines?
Yeah, it sounds simple.
Right, just pour more ceramic into a mold and stamp them out faster.
The engineering reality of producing premium AI-grade MLCCs is what prevents that. We aren't talking about stamping out basic plastic widgets here. No. These high-end MLCCs consist of alternating layers of ceramic dielectric and nickel electrodes.
Yeah.
And when I say layers, I mean hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 individual layers.
All packed into a chip the size of a grain of sand. Okay, wait. How do you physically stack 1,000 layers of ceramic and metal into something that small without it just crumbling into dust?
It requires manufacturing tolerances at the absolute edge of physics. The dielectric thickness between those layers is near, or sometimes even below, 1 single micrometer.
1 micrometer.
Yes. For context, a human hair is about 70 to 100 micrometers thick.
That is insane.
They have to cast a ceramic slip into a microscopic film, print a metallic paste on top of it, stack 1,000 of these films, compress them, and then fire them in a high-temperature kiln.
And I imagine the margin for error in a kiln like that is basically zero.
It is absolutely zero. When you sinter ceramic and nickel together at over 1,000 degrees Celsius, they have different shrinkage rates.
Oh, so they cool differently.
Exactly. If the cooling process is off by a fraction of a degree, or if there is a single microscopic pinhole in that ceramic layer, or honestly, if one tiny speck of dust gets into the clean room, the layers delaminate.
The whole thing falls apart.
The entire part is ruined and will short-circuit under the massive electrical load of an AI GPU.
Now, the technical reports from explainkex.ai also mention that AI servers don't just need these high-layer standard MLCCs. They need something called an advanced 3-terminal design. Can you break down what that actually means?
Sure, it goes back to the speed of the power demand we talked about. When those power spikes happen in microseconds, the electrical current needs a very short, completely unobstructed path to reach the chip.
Okay.
In electronics, any delay or resistance in that delivery path is called inductance. It acts like electrical inertia.
Electrical inertia, got it.
A standard MLCC has 2 terminals and an equivalent series inductance, or ESL, of about 200 to 300 picohenries.
And I'm guessing that's too slow.
Way too slow. For an AI chip, that electrical inertia will starve the chip for power before the capacitor can deliver it.
It crashes.
Right. So manufacturers had to completely redesign the internal structure into reverse geometry, or 3-terminal designs, to drop that ESL down to an ultra-low 20 to 30 picohenries.
So basically a tenth of the resistance.
Exactly. Achieving that requires entirely specialized tooling, different electrode masks, and unique termination processes.
Okay, let me push back on this on behalf of anyone who has ever built a PC or even just worked on a weekend hardware project.
Go for it.
If I'm building a deck and I run out of a specific 2-inch wood screw, I just go to the hardware store and find a slightly different brand that is roughly the same size.
Sure.
If the exact 3-terminal ultra-low ESL part is sold out, can't an incredibly smart data center engineer just open up a catalog and swap in a slightly different size or a different brand? I mean, it is just a capacitor holding a charge.
That assumption right there is the definition of a replacement nightmare in the electronics industry.
Real.
You absolutely cannot just match the physical size and the nominal capacitance and call it a day.
Why not? If it holds the right amount of charge, shouldn't it work?
Let me explain it physically. There is a phenomenon in high-capacitance MLCCs called DC bias.
DC bias.
Imagine a sponge holding water.
Yeah.
When it's just sitting there, it holds a specific amount. But as you apply physical pressure to the sponge, it compresses, and its capacity to hold water shrinks.
Okay, that makes sense.
DC bias is the electrical equivalent of that pressure. When you apply a high voltage to these capacitors, they actually lose a significant portion of their effective capacitance.
Oh, wow.
Right. So a premium part from a Tier 1 manufacturer might hold its charge perfectly under stress, but a quote-unquote substitute from a cheaper catalog might lose 60% of its capacitance under the exact same voltage.
So if you swap that cheap substitute in...
Your multi-million-dollar AI server crashes the very second it tries to train a model.
Hmm.
Substitutes must perfectly match DC bias curves, temperature ratings, and impedance profiles.
It's not just plug and play.
Not at all. In almost every case, swapping an MLCC brand means you have to completely redesign the printed circuit board, validate it, test it for thermal reliability, and get the entire server rack reapproved.
Which perfectly explains the situation with the Chinese suppliers mentioned in the sources.
Yes, exactly.
The reporting shows that companies like Hongda Capacitors are aggressively pitching their semi-finished MLCC solutions right now. They are boasting about having 5 advanced production lines and are marketing themselves as direct alternatives to the Tier 1 brands. They clearly see this massive shortage and want to fill the gap.
They definitely see the gap, and they're pushing very hard into the high-capacitance segment. But because of that replacement nightmare we just explored, major AI companies simply cannot switch to them overnight.
They can't just take a chance on them.
Right. The sources indicate there's a 2 to 3 year certification lag to use these new suppliers for AI and automotive grades.
2 to 3 years.
Yeah, you have to definitively prove that your newly manufactured capacitor will survive for years inside a boiling hot, vibrating server rack without a single microscopic failure. You cannot fast-track the physics of thermal and life cycle testing.
So you can't just easily swap the part for a competitor's, and you clearly can't just build a new factory overnight either. I mean, the IC components and TrendForce reports are very clear that constructing a high-grade MLCC fab takes 1.5 to 2 years minimum. And even after the building is up, it takes 12 to 16 months just for the precision equipment, those ceramic casting machines and high-temperature sintering furnaces to be delivered and calibrated. You are literally trapped by the physics of time and manufacturing.
And because the manufacturing of these premium parts is so highly inflexible, the sudden surge in AI demand has violently fractured the entire market. Industry analysts are now categorizing this as a two-speed market.
A two-speed market. Let's break that down for everyone. Because it takes years to certify a new supplier and years to build a new factory, the massive demand has nowhere to go but to the existing manufacturers. Let's look at the data on this two-speed reality.
Okay.
If you look at standard commodity MLCCs, the kind that go into basic consumer electronics or smart home devices, the market is totally stable. You order them, and they show up in a standard 8 to 20-week lead time. No panic whatsoever.
Normal business.
Right. But then you look at the premium AI-grade parts, and it is a completely different universe.
For the high-capacitance, AI-specific grades, buyers are suddenly facing lead times of 20 to 40-plus weeks.
That's almost a year.
Yeah. Murata, which is the absolute giant in this space, owning about 45% of the AI submarket, has product deliveries stretching out to 30 or 36 weeks. Samsung Electromechanics, or SEMCO, holds about 39% market share, and their high-capacitance parts are seeing average lead times hovering right around 40 weeks.
And when lead times stretch out to almost a full year, panic buying sets in across the entire supply chain. According to the ExplainX.ai blog, prices for these scarce specifications have spiked 3 to 5 times their normal rate.
And that's just the official rate.
Yeah, there are even reports of desperate buyers paying up to 8 to 10 times the market price on the spot market just to secure supply so their multi-million-dollar assembly lines don't shut down.
It's pure panic.
The channel inventory, which is the buffer of spare parts sitting in warehouses globally, has plummeted to under 30 days. Historically, the industry insists on keeping about 4.5 months of inventory to feel safe.
The statistic that truly puts this two-speed market into perspective is the volume distribution. AI applications only account for about 2 to 3% of total MLCC units globally.
Which sounds as a rounding error.
It does. But because AI requires the absolute highest-end specifications, the 1,000-layer ultra-low ESL parts, that tiny 2% of volume is eating up roughly 15% of the total high-grade manufacturing capacity globally.
Because these factories are maxed out, you'd think they could just dedicate all their lines to AI to clear the backlog. But they can't, because AI is in a massive bidding war for this exact same factory space with another booming industry, which is electric vehicles.
The EV clash is a critical part of this structural shortage. If you think an AI server is demanding on power delivery, look at the architecture of a modern EV.
It's massive.
A traditional combustion engine car uses maybe 3,000 to 5,000 MLCCs for its basic sensors, infotainment, and radios. A modern electric vehicle uses 10,000 or more.
Double the amount.
And crucially, these are not standard capacitors. The battery pack and drivetrain of an EV operate at extremely high voltages. They require specialized MLCCs rated for 630 to 1,000 volts. Furthermore, they must pass incredibly strict automotive-grade safety certifications, known as AEC-Q 200.
So they have to survive extreme thermal cycling, relentless physical vibration, and humidity for over a decade. So if I'm tracking the causality here, we have a tiny, highly restricted pool of premium manufacturing lines, and suddenly, NVIDIA, the massive cloud providers, Tesla, and the global telecom giants are all trying to shove their massive, highly specialized orders through the exact same door at the exact same time.
This is what economists call a true structural shortage. This is not a shipping delay, and it's not a temporary hiccup at a port. It is a fundamental capacity imbalance. What's fascinating here is how concentrated the power to solve this is.
Who holds the cards?
Just 3 companies, Murata, Samsung, and Taiyu Yuden. They control roughly 77% of this global high-end capacity. And right now, their factory utilization rates are maxed out at 90 to 95%.
Which means there's absolutely zero slack in the system. If one hyperscaler's data center order comes in even slightly larger than expected, the whole global schedule breaks.
There is no spare room for sudden demand surges, and the planned capacity expansions simply aren't coming fast enough to save the day in 2026.
They just take too long to build.
Right. Murata has a massive 56 billion yen expansion specifically focused on server capacity, but that won't enter mass production until late 2026 at the earliest. Semco's high-end ramp-up is delayed until early 2027. So for the foreseeable future, there's simply not enough factory space to go around.
Here's where it gets really interesting. With zero slack in the system, how do the major tech players, the massive hyperscalers and cloud service providers, ensure their AI data centers actually get built?
They have to get creative.
Because if you are a tech CEO, you absolutely cannot go to your shareholders and say, well, sorry, we missed our product launch because procurement couldn't find a 2-cent ceramic chip. So how are they rewriting the rules of the supply chain to survive this?
They are completely abandoning the old way of doing business. Historically, the job of a procurement officer dealing with passive components like MLCCs was fairly straightforward. You bought them on the spot market or through short-term orders as you needed them.
You checked a catalog, placed an order, and they arrived.
Exactly. That era is definitively over for premium parts. Now we are seeing the rise of unprecedented long-term agreements or LTAs. Procurement officers are no longer just clicking buy, they are flying to Japan and South Korea to negotiate dedicated factory lines years in advance.
The numbers on these LTAs reflect that desperation, too. The TrendForce reporting highlighted a recent contract signed by Samsung Electromechanics. They locked in a 450 billion Korean won agreement, that is roughly 330 million US dollars, with a major North American cloud service provider.
Huge contract.
And this contract is exclusively to supply AI server MLCCs for 1 full year, running all the way through 2027. A massive cloud provider is locking down their capacitor supply years before the servers are even built.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it represents a total transformation of AI infrastructure procurement. It's not just about securing your allocation of advanced GPUs anymore.
No.
System integrators now have to reserve factory capacity for a tiny passive component 12 to 18 months in advance, right alongside their multi-million-dollar accelerator orders. They are forcing their way to the front of the line with massive capital guarantees.
And the manufacturers are responding with equally massive long-term capital investments. Look at Samsung's overarching strategy here. They are investing an astonishing $23 trillion won through the year 2040 in their South Korean hubs.
It's an unbelievable amount of money.
The breakdown is fascinating. $15 trillion is going to Busan specifically to build a global manufacturing hub for these high-value MLCCs, and another $8 trillion is going to Sejong, specifically focused on producing advanced FCBGA substrates.
Right, which are the specialized packaging bases that complex AI chips sit on.
Exactly. They recognize that the physical infrastructure of AI isn't a temporary boom. It's going to require a permanent, massive expansion of premium component manufacturing.
The reality of building a data center today is incredibly brittle. A system integrator can have their allocation of NVIDIA or AMD GPUs perfectly secured. The silicon can literally be sitting on the loading dock ready to go.
Ready to be plugged in.
But if procurement failed to secure an LTA for that specific high capacitance, low ESL MLCC, that entire multi-million-dollar server rack assembly line grinds to an absolute halt. A missing capacitor stops the AI revolution just as effectively as a missing GPU.
Yeah, so what does this all mean? When you step back and look at this whole story, it offers such a fascinating reality check for us.
It really does.
We spend so much time marveling at the grand, software-driven promises of the AI era. We talk endlessly about neural networks, large language models, and artificial general intelligence. It all sounds like this frictionless magic happening up in the cloud.
But there's always physical hardware underneath it all.
Exactly. The truth is, all of that software magic relies entirely on mastering the microscopic, incredibly difficult physical reality of power delivery. You can design the smartest, most advanced silicon chip in human history, but it means absolutely nothing without a microscopic ceramic sandwich to feed it power cleanly.
It is the ultimate physical constraint on a digital revolution. And this raises an important question, one that every tech planner, engineer, and investor needs to be thinking about moving forward.
What's that?
If a component that used to cost fractions of a cent, a part that engineers barely gave a second thought to 2 years ago, can successfully bottleneck the deployment of multi-million-dollar AI infrastructure today, what else is out there?
Right. What other invisible commodities are silently dictating the pace of human technological progress right under our noses?
Will the AI arms race ultimately be won not by the companies with the smartest software algorithms or even the fastest silicon, but by whoever manages to quietly lock down the most unglamorous, overlooked supply chains on Earth? It's a thought that completely reframes how we measure technological dominance in the 21st century.
It really does. You start looking around your desk for the next grain of rice that could stop the world. And that's exactly where we'll leave it for today. Keep questioning the physical foundations of our digital world, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.